I did not expect that a cheater could actually be admitted to Blackhawk. Has the school lowered its standards? Ji Yanran thought as she walked and made no connection between Han Sen and my girlfriend is Genron. In her mind, Han Sen was a cheater and nowhere near a master. Soon, Ji Yanran saw Han Sen was behind her, so she turned around and frowned at him. What do you want? I'm going back to my dorm. You think I'm following you? Han Sen rolled his eyes. Which department are you in? Where is your dorm? Ji Yanran refused to believe him. Archery department, building E10 room 304.
Han Sen smiled at her.
Ji Yanran paused, for Han Sen's dormitory was really this way. And the building where Han Sen lived was right behind her building. Archery department. No wonder you can be admitted to Blackhawk. Cheater in games and cheater in the entrance exam, Ji Yanran said. Why are you treating your boyfriend like this? Said Han Sen helplessly. You can save that comment when you could beat me, cheater, Ji Yanran said. Piece of cake. I can do it now if you wish. Han Sen was a little annoyed by being called a cheater. Want to cheat again? Ji Yanran said with disdain. Han Sen was speechless. You said I cheated and refused to let me prove it to you. What do you want? If you really have what it takes, we could have a match on the professional holographic training machine tomorrow, Ji Yanran said confidently. Well, give me your comlink number. I'll contact you tomorrow, Han Sen smiled and said. Ji Yanran rolled her eyes. Don't try to get my number. Tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I will wait for you in building E16 room 138. Well, I will go. Wait to become my girlfriend.
Han Sen log head.
Ji Yanran did not talk to him again and walked away. The next afternoon, when Han Sen was ready to go, Qin Xian suddenly gave him an order to go back to Steel Armor Shelter for an important task. Han Sen had to give up the plan to meet Ji Yanran and teleported to Steel Armor Shelter. Although he would like to inform Ji Yanran, she did not tell him her number, so he had no way to do it. Ji Yanran went there at 3 o'clock and waited, but saw no one there. She was even more convinced that he was a cheater. Han Sen came back after 2 days, and there was still no way to contact Ji Yanran. He did not worry about it too much and continued to study according to his own plan. Everyone, I have something to say. Fatty cleared his throat and said, holding a stack of paper in his hand. President, we can hear you, replied Sher as he was training on a holographic machine. Other people were also doing their own thing. Feeling helpless, Fatty said, in a few days, Starry Cup will begin, and as a society of Warframe, we must register for some Warframe items. Let's see which ones we should go for. You are the president. You decide. Lu Ming had nothing to contribute. Zhang Yang was zealous. Of course, all of them. The number of our members would not even cover all the items. Wang Mingming blinked her eyes and said, we are the Heavy Warframe Society, so we will fall short to the Warframe Society in many items, Li Jinjin said. Wang Chun added, for the items in combat, we will not do well. And we haven't even practiced the 5-on-5 team combat and will be much worse than the Warframe Society. That is challenging, but as long as we unite as one, we will be able to win. Zhang Yang was full of self-confidence. Fatty looked to Wang Mingming. Which one should we apply for? Wang Mingming looked at Han Sen, who was reading, Brother Han, what do you say? That Starry Cup, what is in it for the champion? Han Sen pondered and asked. Skinny quickly said, of course. The prize depends on the item, and all top 3 will get something. Of course, the champion's prize is the best. For example, all members of the champion team of the 5-on-5 combat will gain a Warframe of the Star B series, which was worth more than 1 million each. The champion of the single combat will win the lastest Warframe of the King series, which has a value of nearly 10 million. There are prizes for the top 3 of all items. We should try our best. Even if we don't win anything, it would be a great opportunity for us to practice, Fatty said. Let's register for all then. Han Sen heard there were so many awards paid by Starry Group and decided to try. For real. Fatty looked to Wang Mingming again. If Brother Han says so. Wang Mingming thought about it and asked, Is there any overlaps between these items? Can one show up in all of them? Fatty checked the schedule and said, there is no problem other than one item, which is a single item, so one of us could go for that. Well then, our president will take care of the registration, Wang Mingming said with a smile. Mingming, will this work? Our society has so few people, and almost all of us are freshmen. Would it look too bad if we lost in everything? Li Zhenjin said with some concern. It does not matter. With Brother Han here, we will not lose. Wang Mingming had blind trust in Han Sen. Li Zhenjin and Wang Chun cast an odd look to Han Senator. They could not tell what was so special about this freshman that Wang worshipped him so much. They had also asked Wang Mingming about it, and Wang simply said she had known him all her life, and he had always been an impressive person. But Li Zhenjin and Wang Chun were quite skeptical about it, since they had not seen any excellent performance from him. And Han Sen had been practicing on heavy warframes instead of combat warframes these days, so it would be unrealistic to say he would get any prize. Luo Xiangyang originally wanted to persuade Han Sen to join the Warframe Society, but was delayed by something else. When he had finished his other business on this day, he returned to school and immediately came to the Heavy Warframe Society. When Luo Xiangyang arrived at the Heavy Warframe Society, the society members just decided on their application in the upcoming Starry Cup. Han Sen, Luo Xiangyang walked into the 7th warehouse and called, "Brother, you just came?" Han Sen got up and greeted Luo. "Who is this man?" Li Zhenjin felt puzzled and asked. Other people also looked at Han Senator. Apparently, they did not know who he was either. However, Fatty and Skinny were surprised because they knew who Luo Xiangyang was, the coach of Warframe Society, but they did not understand why Han Sen called him brother. Isn't he a member here?
Han Sen hesitated.
He never asked anyone about this and assumed that Luo was a member student. Hearing the words of Han Sen, Fatty and Skinny almost choked. Luo was a coach at Warframe Society. How could he be a student? Luo Xinyang smiled and patted Han Sen on the shoulder. Han Sen, your Warframe operation skills are great. Are you interested in joining the Warframe Society? Oh, I forgot to tell you that I am the coach at Warframe Society and I promise you will be able to get the best training, use the best training equipment in school, and get the best guidance. Luo Xiangyang's words shocked everyone but Wang Mingming. They could not imagine that a coach of Warframe Society would personally invite Han Sen to join them. Warframe Society and Martial Arts Society were the two most popular societies. Many talented students took the initiative to join them each year, and these two societies never needed to recruit any members. Those who wanted to join even needed to go through their selection. These two societies carved up more than 60% of the talented students of Blackhawk. Different from Heavy Warframe Society, they never lacked talents. But then the dignified coach of Warframe Society even personally went to poach someone from Heavy Warframe Society and made such a promise, which was quite shocking. Fatty and Skinny had their mouths wide open but could not make a sound. They were familiar with Luo, because the only reason they were here was that they had failed to enter the Warframe Society in the first place. They were surprised that someone that Luo Xiangyang would personally invite was in their society. "I am sorry, Coach Luo, but I have joined the Heavy Warframe Society already," Han Sen declined. The reason Han Sen had promised to join Heavy Warframe Society was twofold. First, he did it for Wang Mingming. Second, he valued the freedom here. He could come and go as he wanted and did not need to worry about anything. This way he could take tasks as he wanted any time or go to God's sanctuary to hunt. He would not quite like it if he had to practice on a warframe every single day. Luo Xiangyang did not give up and continued to persuade him. "With your talent and ability, it would be a waste if you stayed here. Give me 2 or 3 years, and I can get you into the top 3 in the entire alliance. The championship is not impossible either, which is exactly my goal." The rest were dumbfounded and regarded Han Sen, since they had never seen anything special about him that deserved these words from Luo. "Sorry, Coach Luo. I cannot take your offer," Han Sen once again refused. Do not rush to refuse. Think about it. If you become a champion in the Warframe contest in the Alliance during your study, your final rating will be a lot higher. Luo Xiangyang added, "I will also try my best to give you the best rating possible. When you figure it out, you can come to me at Warframe Society. I will always welcome you to join." After Luo Xiangyang left, the rest were still staring at Han Sen. "Coach Luo offered you such conditions, and you actually refused him?" Fatty could not believe what had happened and asked Han Sen, "Don't you know what higher final rating means?" "I certainly do," Han Sen said with a smile. "The higher the final rating, the bigger the chance to get a better position and rank when one served." "And you turned him down?" Li Zhenzhen said with a disbelieving look. If I wanted those extra points, I would not have chosen to join our society.
Han Sen shrugged.
His goal was his own perfect evolution, rather than a certain expertise. Although he was interested in Warframe operation, it was just a hobby. He would not put everything in it, or waste too much time on it. If he could become a sacred blood aristocrat, it would be much more useful than getting the highest final rating, level S. In addition, he was confident that he would be rated level S with, or without any extra points. The rest looked at Han Sen as if he was an alien, not believing he had given up such a great opportunity to get a better final rating. His roommates were not too surprised. With Han Sen's skill in Hand of God, he could beat Li Yufeng by 20 points. Had he joined Hand of God Society, he could have gotten the extra points a long time ago. Why would he wait for Luo Xiangyang to invite him? I said that we would be great in the contest with Brother Han here. Now do you believe me? Wang Mingming said proudly. Fatty thought of Starry Cup and became thrilled. With Han Sen, whom Luo Xiangyang had invited personally in their society, maybe Heavy Warframe Society could get somewhere this time. Even if they could not win the championship, some third places were enough to give them a reputation. Obviously, Fatty was still underestimating Han Senator. Had he known that Han Sen had fought Luo Xiangyang for an hour without losing, he would have set his goal higher. Han Sen was once again the last one to leave the 7th warehouse. He made a habitual visit to the cafeteria and found the juices were all gone again. Then it chanced that he saw Ji Yinran sitting there eating her meal. Ji Yinran had been preparing for Starry Cup recently as well and had spent long hours practicing every day. She did not expect to see Han Sen here again. She saw Han Sen and said nothing. Since he did not show up, it meant he had admitted he was not good enough, and she did not want to rub it in. Han Sen sat across her and said, "Last time I was delayed by something else. Without your number, I was not able to inform you, and I am so sorry about it. Why do men always have so many excuses?" Ji Yinran said. Han Sen opened his mouth and felt it was hard to explain. He had failed to show up indeed, so no explanation seemed good enough. Shall we have a match tomorrow? Han Sen thought for a moment and decided he could only prove himself with his ability. Forget it, I do not want to be played again. Ji Yinran had clearly identified Han Sen as a cheater and did not intend to indulge him. When Han Sen wanted to explain, a few students came to them. One of them saw Han Sen and asked Ji Yinran, "Yinran, who is he?" "A freshman. I don't know his name." Ji Yinran did not tell Li Yufeng about Han Sen, afraid that Li might look for trouble. Li Yufeng nodded and asked Han Sen, "Which department are you in?"
Archery, replied Han Sen casually.
A thin man sat next to Han Sen, threw one arm around Han's shoulder and said while squinting, "Brother, if you want to get yourself a girl, you need to be smarter. Now this is our president. How dare you? Anyone could chase after a pretty girl. Why can't I?" Han Sen seemed very naive. The thin man grinned, put a spitball on the table, and took a cup to cover the spitball. Taking 2 extra cups, he put them upside down and began to move the 3 cups around so swiftly that it was bedazzling. After a while, the thin man smiled and said to Han Sen, "If you can tell under which cup the spitball is, you can go out with anyone you choose. If not, get lost and do not show your face in front of our president again." Ji Yinran did not stop the thin man, because she was interested to know Han Sen's reply. The thin man had a speed that was among the top 3 in the Hand of God Society. It was not that easy to tell. Han Sen looked at the thin man and put his hand on a cup with a smile. The thin man was overjoyed. But Han Sen smiled and said, "There's nothing under this cup." Then Han Sen lifted the cup, and there was nothing underneath. Han Sen put his hand on the next cup, stroked it and said, "Not under this one either." The cup was again lifted by Han Sen, and there was nothing on the table. Han Sen placed a finger on the last cup and said with a smile, "No need to tell you about this one." The thin man and the rest were embarrassed, and even Ji Yinran regarded Han Sen curiously, not expecting him to be so good. "You are lucky today. Do not let me see you again," snapped the thin man. "You think this is finished?" Han Sen looked at the thin man, smiling. He was not someone who would not fight back after being bullied. "What do you want?" The thin man stared at Han Sen. Without a word, Han Sen put the 3 cups upside down in front of him and covered the spitball with 1 cup like the thin man, then quickly moved the 3 cups around. Jiaran, Li Yufeng, and the thin man all knew what Han was trying to do, but felt he was trying to teach fish how to swim. His speed was much lower than that of the thin man, so the latter even snorted. Han Sen acted as if he had not heard it and continued to exchange the cups. Then he sat up and looked at the group of people. As you said, if you could guess right, I don't care what you do. If not, then #K-off and stay away from Ji Yanran. The thin man sneered, reached out and was about to lift one of the cups. You just don't understand your limit, do you? Han Sen blocked the thin man's hand, and the latter stared at Han angrily. What are you doing? Han Sen looked at Li Yufeng, smiled and said, I just want to know if you are sure that you could represent everyone here? If not, please get me someone who could. The thin man suddenly looked at Li Yufeng. Although he was sure, he did not know whether he could represent Li Yufeng. Li Yufeng said quietly, Lift it. Hearing Li Yufeng's approval, the thin man was bathed in pride. He said to Han Sen condescendingly, Boy, I will now show you who the real master is. It's under this cup. The thin man lifted the cup in the middle up, full of self-confidence. But after the cup was lifted, all were stunned, and the thin man looked dreadful. There was nothing under that cup. Impossible. This is impossible. The thin man widened his eyes and looked into the cup he was holding. There was nothing. Ji Yanran was also puzzled, as she thought that the spitball should be under the middle cup. How could it disappear? In case you are not convinced, I will let you try one more time. Pick another one. Han Sen pointed to the 2 cups left on the table and said to Li Yufeng. Li Yufeng snorted and put his hand on one cup. There is nothing here. Li Yufeng had learned Han Sen's way. Since the spitball was not where it should be, and there was no way they were all wrong about where it was, the only possibility was that Han Sen used some method to hide the spitball. Therefore, the 2 cups left should also be empty. But when Li Yufeng lifted the cup, he paused, as the spitball was under that cup. The thin man and the rest were stunned. If Han Sen simply took the spitball away, they would not be surprised, because that was exactly what the thin man had done, and there should be nothing under all 3 cups. However, the spitball was indeed under a different cup, which appalled everyone. Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen in surprise and did not know how he could have done that. Now you can disappear, right? Said Han Sen while drinking water. Boy, don't be too arrogant, exclaimed the thin man. Go. Li Yufeng stood up and said. Watching the group going away, Han Sen was then able to focus on his food. How did you do that? Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen curiously and asked. She trusted her own judgment, and the spitball should be under the middle cup originally. What she did not understand was when Han Sen retrieved the spitball from the middle cup and placed it in another cup. She did not see how he did it. Han Sen just smiled at Ji Yanran and said faintly, It's a secret. Big deal. You must have used some cheating method as well, Ji Yanran said, pouting. You show me how I cheated then, Han Sen blinked and said. I don't know how to cheat, Ji Yanran said, with her gaze on the 3 cups, wanting to know how Han Sen did it. If you really want to know, I can tell you on one condition, he said. What do you want me to do?
Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen vigilantly.
Since you are my girlfriend, shall we go to dinner and movie sometime? Han Sen suggested with a smile. Ji Yanran stared at Han Sen and said, Who is your girlfriend? If you say that again, I won't be polite anymore. So, you do not want to know? Han Sen was not the least scared by the ferocious look on her sweet face.
Ji Yanran paused.
She really wanted to know how Han Sen did it. The members of Hand of God Society were always playing this game, the key factors of which were speed and eyesight. If she could learn the method Han Sen had used, she would be invincible in this game. Just a meal and movie? Ji Yanran blinked and asked. Yes.
Han Sen låg head.
Well, that's fine. Now tell me how you did it. Ji Yanran hesitated and said. In fact, it is very simple. As long as your hand is fast enough, you can do it with some special gestures. Han Sen did not lie. He was simply using sleeve blade, but his hand was too fast and his movements too subtle, so Ji Yanran could not have seen how he had managed to do it. If you won't tell me the truth, then forget it. Ji Yanran refused to take Han Sen's word for it, as she did not believe that he was that fast. If you do not believe me, then there is nothing I could do. I've said all I could. Don't forget about the dinner and movie tomorrow, Han Sen shrugged and said. I promised you dinner and movie, but did not say when. In 100 years, liar. Ji Yanran spit out her tongue at him, chuckled and left. Han Sen had intended to practice operating warframes before Starry Cup began. However, Lin Beifeng told him excitedly that he had discovered a nest full of mutant creatures, which Lin could not take care of alone, and asked Han Sen to hunt with him.
Sen, hurry.
Teleport now, and we could split the mutant creatures 50-50. Lin Beifeng did not dare to go alone, and was reluctant to cooperate with any of the gangs. If he did that, he might not even be able to get 30%. After all, he only provided a location, and in accordance with the rules, if he did not contribute anything else, all he could have was 30%. How long does it take?
Han Sen hesitated.
The Starry Cup will begin in a few days. He had promised Fatty that he would go. It was also his idea to apply for all the items, so it would not make sense if he missed it. It's not far, just in the southern mountains. With mounts, it would take us less than a day. Lin Beifeng quickly said. Fine, wait for me at the gate of steel armor shelter. I will be there. Han Sen was very interested as he only had 52 mutant geno points and wished to gain more. Han Sen used the school's teleport station to enter the shelter and saw Lin Beifeng walking around the gate in circles, looking very anxious. My brother, you finally come? Let's go now. Lin Beifeng grabbed Han Sen the moment he saw Han. The two summoned their mounts and marched into the southern mountains. Han Sen saw that Lin Beifeng was still riding a primitive mount and laughed. Lin, why are you still riding a primitive mount? Mutant mounts are very rare. I have been looking but no one was selling. Lin looked at the mutant three-eyed beast Han Sen was riding admiringly. I have one. Are you interested? Han Sen was ready to sell the mutant horned sandfox mount since he had no use of it. You should have said so earlier. What kind of mount is it? Show me. Lin quickly said. Han Sen summoned the mutant horned sandfox. Lin fell in love with the strong white fox and said, Senator, I will take it. Name your price. Do you have S-Class license of St. Hall?
Han Sen asked.
Those are hard to come by. My family had some, but we have used them up, Lin said helplessly. All right, then I will take a larger share of the mutant creatures this time, Han Sen pondered and said. No problem, but they all seem to be the same type of creatures, and it does not do anything if you eat too many. Lin looked at Han puzzled, not understanding why he would want so much of the same kind of meat. I'm not eating them myself, but feeding a pet. Han Sen summoned his golden rockworm king. Feeding a pet with mutant meat. How extravagant. Lin saw the golden little worm in Han's palm and asked, It must be a mutant pet? Guess again, Han Sen said with a smile. Lin Beifeng suddenly widened his eyes. This is a sacred blood pet? Why not?
Han Sen sighed.
Wow, Sen. You are so awesome that even your pet is sacred blood. Lin Beifeng thought about it and said, So I will take this mutant beast soul mount. No matter how many mutant creatures we hunt, I will only take 5 and the rest are all yours. Cool, Han Sen agreed right away. What Lin Beifeng found was a large nest of mutant creatures, and it would not be a bad deal. When Lin Beifeng arrived at a crevice of the mountain, Han Sen was shocked. A crevice was cracked into the mountain for either an earthquake or other reasons. Many giant blue ants the size of mice were going in and out of the crevice. From afar, they could only see an ocean of blue lights, so there should be at least 100 or 200 of them. Sen, these are the creatures. Their bodies are very hard, and there are too many of them. When I just found them, I tried to wield my mutant beast soul knife at one of them and was only able to leave a white mark on its shell. Lin paused and then said, Although they are small in size, they are very fast. In shorter distances, their speed was about the same as our mutant beast soul mounts. They couldn't keep that speed up, though. After running for 100 feet, they will become slow. And each of them can lift a stone of 300 pounds easily. When Lin Beifeng was explaining, Han Sen examined the giant ants that looked like they were made of blue crystal, and found that they were biting at the rocks and making the crevice wider and wider. The rocks were like chocolate in their mouth, and it was hard to tell the rocks were hard just by watching. There are so many of them that the two of us would die there if we went inside, Han Sen said quietly. How should we hunt then? Lin sounded anxious. It does not matter. I am an archer, and we do not need to approach them. Han Sen looked around to find a suitable location and summoned his horned bow and mutant black stinger arrow. He then tied a high-tech load-bearing thread on the nock of his arrow. Although the thread was as thin as a hair, it could withstand the weight of 100 pounds. A big ant would be easy. Sen, is it too far from here? These creatures' shells are very hard, and even mutant beast soul weapons could hardly hurt them. Lin Beifeng estimated that they were at least half a mile from those ants, and even if the arrow was a mutant beast soul, it probably still could not pierce their shells. If an archer could only shoot at the enemy's armor, then he would not be considered a competent archer, Han Sen said and aimed his arrow at the crevice. Not the armor? But these things are covered in shell, and there is only a very narrow gap in their joints, Lin Beifeng said, and saw the arrow had left the string. Whiz! Half a mile away, the arrow flew as fast as electricity and went deep into the gap of a giant ant's shell. That blue ant was killed almost instantly, which amazed Lin. Mutant phantom ant killed.
No beast soul gun.
Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. With the voice in Han Sen's mind, he saw the phantom ants nearby were all alarmed and looking around for traces of their enemy. But after they covered the ground nearby, they found nothing and went back to the crevice and started to consume the rocks. Han Sen used the thread to pull back the arrow and the dead phantom ant. Soon he made another shot and killed another ant. Lin Beifeng admired Han Sen very much. From such a distance, Lin could not even tell what the ants looked like, and yet Han Sen could hit the small gaps in their shells each time. It was almost magical. When Han Sen was hunting the ants, Lin Beifeng was treating their bodies. The ants looked big, but the edible part was only a piece of jelly-like meat the size of an egg. Lin Beifeng ate several and enjoyed the fun of mutant geno point growth. But like any other creature, only the first few of the same kind worked. Lin Beifeng had stopped after eating 5 ants. According to people's general experience, 5 was the limit. If one continued to eat the same type of meat after the 5th creature, it might take a dozen creatures for one to gain another geno point. The phantom ants killed by Han Sen afterwards were treated with salt by Lin. They would then bake the meat dry so that it would be easier to carry and store. Han Sen also ate 5 ants himself and heard the voice telling him about the growth in his mutant geno points. Han Sen's mutant geno points also rose from 52 points to 64 points. He had a relatively high number of mutant geno points, so in the future, even when he ate new meat, the effect would not be as good. Han Sen summoned the Golden Rock Worm King. The small worm almost devoured a phantom ant instantaneously, and even the shell of the ant was crunched down by the worm. The Worm King was not even as big as the ant, so Han Sen had no idea how it ate the ant up. Having consumed a dozen phantom ants, the Worm King's body swelled up and became as big as a fist. Han Sen told Lin not to treat the meat anymore and threw the ants' bodies directly at the Worm King, which was still able to continue eating. After eating 3 dozen ants, the Worm King grew as big as the phantom ant and had no other change. A sacred blood pet is indeed impressive. It at least has an Olympic-size appetite. Lin Beifeng was already stunned. The Worm King was basically eating gold. Han Sen was not distressed at all. He could not put large quantity of mutant meat on the market anyway, so he might as well feed it to his pet. But Han Sen was not about to give it all the meat, as he needed to save some for Meowth. In front of Lin Beifeng, Han Sen could not summon Meowth. It was a beast soul pet that Qin Xian gave $, so if he were to summon it, the secret might get out. Had I known that an archer could do so much, I should have learned archery. Lin cast an envious look toward Han Sen, who was hunting casually. It's not like every archer can do this, Han Sen said with a smile. If he had not practiced Jade Skin, without his sacred geno points, sacred blood bow, and mutant arrow, there was no way he could hunt phantom ants like this. An average person could not see the gaps in the ants' bodies from such a distance at all. Han Sen suddenly heard a different voice when he killed another phantom ant. Mutant phantom ant killed. Beast soul of mutant phantom ant gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. Type of beast soul of mutant phantom ant. Armor. Han Sen summoned the mutant beast soul armor and was suddenly covered in blue crystal. It had thorough protection like his black beetle armor and was even prettier. Lin Beifeng was amazed. What a gorgeous suit of armor. If a woman wears it, it would be? Lin was very eager to ask for the Phantom Ant armor, but did not know what to say. He had just got a mutant beast soul mount from Han Sen and did not have the nerve to ask for something else. Ahem, Sen. Would you use this beast soul? If not, I can double no. Triple the price of an ordinary mutant beast soul armor to buy it? Asked Lin, obsessed with the look of this suit of armor. I don't need money now, but I would trade it for an S-class license. Han Sen pondered and said, he did not really need this suit of armor, but could save it for later. He could sell it as well, but not just for money. My brother, I really do not have any S-class license. The military control is strict. A-class is fine, but S-class is really hard to get, Lin said bitterly. Isn't this beast soul hard to get? Han Sen grinned and asked. Of course. Lin Beifeng frowned and thought for a moment, then said to Han Sen, I don't have S-class licenses, but do have one thing that you might like. When we are back, I will show you, and if you're interested, we could trade. If not, then forget it. What is it?
Han Sen asked curiously.
A super biological warframe, Lin replied. I know about biological warframes, but why super?
Han Sen asked.
Lin Beifeng said, the ones we usually see are semi-biological, semi-mechanical. Although their appearance is almost like a creature, and they can complete many difficult actions like human bodies, after all, there are many limitations to them. Super biological warframe is the product of the latest technology in the warframe industry, and it has not been sold in the Alliance yet. Now, only a few military labs have several prototypes. Because the military needs the rare metal our company produce, we have established a connection with the military. And this super biological warframe was a prototype I managed to get from them. It is super cool. What is the difference? Han Sen was very interested in the warframe. This super biological warframe is perfect except that it could not be used in God's sanctuary. An ordinary warframe must be at least 12 to 18 feet tall, not to mention the heavy warframes. Hence you could not bring them with you. A super biological warframe is different. It has adopted a particle restructure technology. I don't know for sure, but it can fit in a suitcase, and once it's open, countless small particles of intelligence will wrap your body up to form a super biological warframe. Mine is a prototype and does not have a weapon system. It is a little more than 12 feet tall and very powerful, much better than the King series of Starry Group. Lin Beifeng said passionately. It can fit into a suitcase? Han Sen gestured the size and was very tempted. You can have a look later. I am sure you will like it, said Lin. Okay, we will see, said Han Sen. Lin Beifeng was filled with joy. He could always have another warframe, but had never seen a beast soul like this ever since he entered God's sanctuary. It was so gorgeous that even sacred blood armor was not its match in appearance. While talking to Lin, Han Sen was seeking opportunities to shoot the phantom ants at the same time. There were less and less phantom ants left in the crevice. However, the Golden Rock Worm King was eating very fast. Han Sen had hunted hundreds of phantom ants, and most of them fell into the stomach of the Golden Rock Worm King. It was never full and was constantly growing. When the phantom ants were almost all gone, the body of the Worm King had become the size of a pillow, and its shell grew as hard as solid gold. Will it become as big as the original Golden Rock Worm King? Han Sen was full of hope. Because he had been feeding Meowth, he had read a lot about beast soul pets, which might the only type of beast soul that could fight on their own. Beast soul mounts needed to be controlled by riders and could not attack creatures themselves, so their main function was still transportation. However, beast soul pets were different. Once they transformed, they would have the ability to hunt and fight, which was what made them important and unique. That was the reason why Han Sen was willing to pay such a big effort to feed Meowth and Golden Rock Worm King. Although it had seemed a difficult task so far, not even Meowth had transformed. Han Sen felt something wrong when he was thinking about his pets. With a glance, he saw a phantom ant the size of a pony climbing out of the crevice. But the crevice was a bit narrow, and its body was stuck there. Using its sharp claws to break the rocks and gnawing at the rocks as if they were tofu, The ant was about to be able to come out. Han Sen suddenly understood why the mutant phantom ants had been eating the rocks. It was not because they enjoyed the taste, but because they were trying to widen the crevice to allow this giant ant to pass. *T. It can't be a sacred blood phantom ant, can it? Lin Beifeng also saw it and exclaimed with his eyes wide. Han Sen drew the string of the horn bow to the fullest and aimed his black stinger arrow at the giant phantom ant. He paused for a second before shooting the arrow. Clank! The black stinger arrow hit the ant in the head and fell, leaving nothing on its shell. *T. So hard. It's absolutely a sacred blood creature, shouted Lin Beifeng. In the blink of an eye, the giant phantom ant had come out of the crevice and rushed toward Han Sen and Lin Beifeng faster than a cheetah. Han Sen took back the black stinger arrow, drew the string one more time, and shot the arrow at the giant phantom ant. Clank! The arrow once again ended up hitting its head and did nothing, while the ant had rushed forward more than 600 feet in that moment. You go first. Han Sen once again summoned the black stinger arrow and shot it at the ant. Let's go together. The gap on its shell is so narrow that no arrow could fit in there. Lin cried, I know what I'm doing. Go. When Han Sen once again pulled the string, the formidable merely half a mile from them. Lin Beifeng saw that Han Sen did not want to leave and had to go first. Lin knew his limit. He could not even withstand one blow from this giant ant and would become a burden of Han Sen's if he stayed. Lin was constantly looking back as he ran, worried about Han Sen's safety. Han Sen soon shot 2 more arrows, which were equally useless, while the giant phantom ant was only less than 600 feet from him. Lin Beifeng's heart was in his throat. Han Sen was as stable as a rock. Suddenly, he had a suit of fiery red armor on his body and a ruby crown on his head. Even his hair turned blonde. His scarlet eyes staring at the giant phantom ant, Han Sen paused. Almost instantaneously, that giant phantom ant was less than 9 feet from him. Throwing itself at Han Sen, the giant phantom ant waved its saw-like claws at his body. Lin Beifeng's heart raced. He saw Han Sen suddenly took a step, which was incredibly fast. Han moved forward instead of backward and stayed very close to the giant phantom ant. He finally shot the arrow. Snap! The distance between them was so short and Han Sen's arrow directly went into the giant phantom ant's mouth. The entire arrow disappeared there, and the giant phantom ant made a painful hissing sound. Han Sen took another step away from the giant phantom ant that was going on a rampage. The giant phantom ant went after him at an incredible speed, making it impossible for Han Sen to pull away from it. When it was about to get him, Han Sen again stepped aside and perfectly dodged its deadly blow. Watching from afar, Lin Beifeng was very nervous. The giant phantom ant was so fast that Han Sen was treading upon sharp knives. Once mistake, and he would be dead. But this fight also made Lin's blood hot, giving him the urge to go back and fight with Han Sen side by side. Checking the speed of the giant phantom ant, Lin Beifeng gave up this stupid thought as once he went back, he would become an appetizer for the ant. Lin Beifeng felt Han Sen's movements were odd after he looked for a while. Although Han was not as fast as the giant phantom ant, he could always avoid its fatal blows. The steps he made in those critical moments were incredibly fast. Obviously, it was not luck, but a certain footwork Han Sen was practicing. Even so, Lin's heart was still racing when seeing signs of danger everywhere. Han Sen had practiced Sparticle for just a short amount of time, so his acceleration could not last more than 1 step. He must wait for a while before he made his second step, and that was enough for Han Senator. As long as he could avoid the fatal attacks from the giant phantom ant, he still had time to seek opportunities. The seemingly dangerous situation had become quite predictable for Han Sen, since he had shapeshifted into the Fairy Queen. The movements of the giant phantom ant did not look too swift to him, and he had enough time to react. If it weren't for the fact that his speed was not as good as his reflexes, he would not even need Sparticle. While dodging the attacks from the giant phantom ant, Han Sen was seeking opportunities to shoot his arrows. He had but one goal, which was the mouth of this ant. The ant's shell was too hard, and it did not even matter when the arrow hit the gap. He could only shoot the arrow directly inside its body. Snap! Another arrow disappeared in its mouth, making the giant phantom ant roll around on the ground in pain. Han Sen took the chance to pull away from it. When the giant phantom ant again threw itself at him, he had already pulled the string again. Snap! Between his steps, Han Sen shot another arrow into the ant's mouth. Lin Beifeng, who was watching from afar, was dumbfounded. It was the first time he had seen an archer like him. Han Sen was shooting the arrow from all kinds of weird angles without so much as a pause, and all his arrows hit the target. Han Sen's achievement should be attributed to his opponent at the contest, Lei Ban, who showed Han what a real archer should do. Shooting while moving was the key. Since then, Han Sen began to consciously train himself. Coupled with the training from Yang Manli and what he had learned at Black Hawk, Han Sen became very good at this. But compared to Lei Ban, his accuracy was still lower. His fitness level and hyper-geno arts made up for it, though. The giant phantom ant slowed down after taking 6 hits. Han Sen knew the toxins from his arrow were working. Although it was not fatal, the giant phantom ant was losing its strength. Hit the iron when it is hot. Han Sen would never give up an opportunity like this and was looking for a chance to shoot his next arrow. This giant phantom ant was not nearly as intelligent as the Sacred Blood Fox King. When it was injured badly already, it still did not have the sense to retreat. Sacred Blood Phantom Ant killed. Beast Soul of Sacred Blood Phantom Ant gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 Sacred Geno points randomly. The Sacred Blood Phantom Ant finally collapsed in front of Han Senator, hearing the voice in his mind. Han Sen just wanted to laugh out loud. Another Sacred Blood Beast Soul, and it was an armor as good as his Black Beetle armor.
Sen, avesome.
Is it a Sacred Blood creature? Lin Beifeng trotted back and asked Han Sen. It sure is, Han Sen said with a smile. Son, did you gain its beast soul? Lin stared at Han Sen and asked. Yep. Han Sen did not lie. Since Lin had seen the mutant beast soul armor, he would recognize the Sacred Blood version. There was no need to deny it. A Sacred Blood beast soul. Honestly, did you sleep with Lady Luck? Lin grabbed Han Sen's shoulder and shook him violently. But Lin did not try to purchase the Sacred Blood beast soul and meat. After Lin calmed down, Han Sen smiled and said to him, Lin, I also need the Sacred Blood beast soul and meat badly, so I can't share. You can take more meat of the mutant ants if you want. Lin Beifeng rolled his eyes at Han Sr. What do I need that for? Sell them? Do I look poor to you? Maybe you can take it back to see if you could trade it for a mutant beast soul.
Han Sen låg head.
Lin Beifeng said, After I saw the mutant phantom ant beast soul armor, I don't want any other mutant beast soul now. I'm not necessarily able to trade it for a beast soul, even if I am simply not in the mood. Lin stared at Han Sen and said, I don't want anything else. But if you want to sell that Sacred Blood Phantom Ant armor, you must come to me first. Lin Beifeng had considered this thoroughly. Han Sen would enter Second God's Sanctuary soon, and by that time, he still had the opportunity to get the Sacred Blood Phantom Ant armor. Okay, this I promise you. If I want to sell it, I will ask you first, agreed Han Sen readily. It's a deal. Lin reached out his hand and wanted to pinky swear. This is too childish, right? Han Sen was embarrassed. I do not care. Lin entwined his little finger with Han's while murmuring, Whoever breaks the promise will have 10 wives and no penis. *#. That is devious. Han Sen quickly got rid of Lin's finger. That's what it takes. Lin laughed. Then the two cleaned up the rest of the mutant phantom ants, which were about 500 in total. Most of them ended up in the Worm King's belly, which was probably bottomless. Han Sen dried and saved 100 phantom ants as Meowth's food, and all the rest was fed to the Worm King. In addition to the 5 he ate, Lin Beifeng was not the least interested in the mutant meat. Han Sen asked him to take some back, but he declined. Lin repeatedly begged Han Sen to inform him immediately once Han Sen wanted to sell the Sacred Blood Phantom Ant armor. Han Sen assured Lin that he would do that. Lin Beifeng watched Han Sen eat a whole pot of Sacred Blood Phantom Ant stew and drank the liquid up, feeling upset. Another 5 Sacred Geno points gained. Han Sen had a staggering 45 Sacred Geno points, almost half of the max, and Han Sen had only entered First God's Sanctuary about a year ago. To comfort Lin Beifeng, Han Sen gave him the mutant phantom ant armor first. So as soon as Lin was back in steel armor shelter, he immediately brought the warframe he was talking about to Han Sen. Sure enough, it was just a silver alloy box the size of a suitcase. Although heavy, it was still hard for one to imagine that it contained a warframe more than 12 feet tall. In God's sanctuary, there was no way to test this warframe, but Han Sen believed that Lin Beifong would not deceive him for a mutant bee soul. Hence, he left God's sanctuary with the case. It was night when Han Sen teleported back to school. He paused and went to the 7th warehouse with the super biological warframe. The warehouse was empty. Han Sen opened the case the way Lin Beifong taught him. A light beam was projected from the case and scanned Han Sen's body. Scan completed. Analysis completed. Super biological warframe Silver Killer unlocked. The moment the case was opened, liquid like mercury mixed with colorful particles flowed out of the case. The entire case then became part of the liquid and flowed toward Han Senator soon. He was covered in that liquid. That feeling was hard to describe. It was like the Iron Man putting his armor on, but a bit different in that all the parts were constructed by the particles. Soon a silver humanoid warframe more than 12 feet tall appeared where Han Sen was standing and Han Sen was sitting in a tight cockpit. Han Sen could only praise the great power of science and technology. A small case of less than 100 pounds could become such a huge warframe, and its weight was also matching the tonnage of a regular warframe. Unfortunately, human science and technology are completely useless in God's sanctuary, or else human would have dominated God's sanctuary already, and all the creatures would have been wiped out.
Han Sen hid.
In fact, the reason why Han Sen had this idea was that he was still in first God's sanctuary. If he evolved and went to the higher phases, he would change his mind. Han Sen tried to drive the Silver Killer, which was indeed powerful as Lin Beifong said. Such a small warframe was actually more powerful than a heavy one like Builder, and of course much more flexible. As long as the operational level was there, Silver Killer could perform all the movements a person could. Like Lin Beifong had said, except for the lack of weapon system, Silver Killer was perfect. Of course, the more difficult the operation, the greater the burden on one's body. Most people would have a hard time controlling their own bodies on a roller coaster. So, to operate a warframe at a high speed was not something anyone could do. After all, it was only a prototype from the military laboratory, so it was impossible to equip it with a weapon system. Or else they would not give it to Lin. Han Sen was content. Although there was no weapon system, Han Sen could install some individual weapons himself, such as laser sword, laser gun, and particle gun. In short, Han Sen was more than satisfied with Silver Killer. If it was not for Lin Beifong, he could never have a warframe like this for a mutant beast soul. Perhaps it was arranged by fate. Huaxing Station had designated Fong Mingquan to host the live broadcast of Starry Cup in Blackhawk Division. Contest Center was, after all, only a temporary show and went off the air soon after the contest. It will resume until the contest next year. Since Fong Mingquan had no shows to host at this point, he chose to host the live broadcast of Starry Cup in Blackhawk Division when asked to choose his next show. Fong Mingquan and Han Sen seemed to have been brought together by fate once again. But Fong Mingquan did not know that Dollar was a student at Blackhawk. At the moment, Fong was quite distressed because he did not know which items he should cover. Because there were many items, some of them were arranged at the same time. As he had brought limited manpower, he had to pick and choose which ones to cover. Lu, what were the traditionally strong items of Blackhawk? Fong Mingquan asked his assistant while checking some data. Lu did some searching on his smart device and quickly replied, Blackhawk's strongest item is men's singles in martial arts. In last year's Starry Cup, they got the 3rd place in the final of the entire alliance. The student who won is still studying here. His name is Ouyang Shaosan, and he has also signed up this year. Any other strong item? Fong Mingquan asked. Not much. Their Warframe Society and Hand of God Society had good performance, which was not that outstanding across the alliance. They were both top 20 to top 10. Lu looked at the data and said with a smile, but it is interesting that with a terrible record in archery, Blackhawk had recruited lots of students specialized in archery this year. I believe they will do much better than in previous years. Archery? Fong Mingquan slightly frowned. Archery was, after all, an unpopular game. The popular ones in the alliance were mainly related to aircraft, warframe, or combat. Archery was quite peripheral, because most people were even more willing to see a game of firearm. Anchor, the only highlight in Blackhawk will be martial arts. We should cover Ouyang Xiaosan's games and throw in some Warframe and Hand of God matches in between, suggested Lu. Still 2 days until the games start. We can decide after learning more about Blackhawk. Fong Mingquan looked at the time. It's late. Let's call it a day. We have been working all night. Some snacks now would be a good idea. Fong Mingquan and Lu left the room assigned to them by the school and went to a cafeteria. It was midnight. The cafeteria was almost empty and food was still being sold at the smart machines. Fong Mingquan looked inside the hall, and only one student was sitting in the corner, eating. Fong then took the food they just bought and sat opposite the student. "Fellow, you are eating so late." Sitting opposite the student, Fong Mingquan said with a smile. Fong believed that the student would recognize himself, because judging from his age, the student must be in First God's Sanctuary and should have watched Contest Center, of which Fong was the host. Han Sen looked up and did not recognize Fong. He had read and appreciated A King Marches in Loneliness, written by him, but he had no time to watch Contest Center. That was why he had heard of Fong Mingquan, but had never seen his face, and thus could not have recognized him. "Because I just finished training and felt a bit hungry." Han Sen looked at Fong Mingquan and Lu, wondering who they were, as they were a bit too old to be students. Fong Mingquan was a little disappointed that Han Sen did not recognize him, but soon let it go. He asked casually while eating, "What is your name? And which department are you from?"
Han Sen, Arkeridepartement. Han Sen ansvarig simply.
Archery department. Fong Mingquan and Lu were surprised that they had met a specially enrolled student the first day they had arrived. Fong Mingquan looked Han Sen up and down. "So you are from the Department of Archery. Have you applied for Starry Cup? Which items in archery did you sign up for?" "None in archery."
Han Sen smiled.
"What did you sign up for then?" Lu could not help but ask.
Var framme, Han Sen sighed.
"So you are in the Warframe Society?" Lu asked. "No, I'm in the Heavy Warframe Society."
Han Sen låghed.
Lu knew what the Heavy Warframe Society was about since he had graduated from a military school as well. That society was most likely full of people who were just wasting their time. Fong Mingquan said with a smile, "Heavy Warframe Society is also a society of Warframe." "Son, you must be great at that then. Which items did you sign up for?" "I have enrolled in all the items, with one exception due to a time conflict." Han Sen thought about it and said. Lu was even more convinced that Han Sen was a dawdler. Although there were many Warframe items, the differences between them were huge. Most people would focus on 1 to 2 items to strive for the best results possible. "So, what kind of performance can we expect from you?" Fong Mingquan asked with a smile. "I will try to get championship in all the items I have signed up for," Han Sen casually replied. Lu almost choked on his drink when hearing his reply. After coughing for a while, Lu cast an odd gaze at Han. "Fellow, I think you should sign up for more items then, such as Hand of God. The more championships the better, right? Hand of God is boring." Han Sen did not care about the irony in Lu's words. "Why?" Fong Mingquan was quite curious. "Because all the opponents are too weak," said Han Sen casually. Lu regarded Han Sen, unable to believe what he had heard. Lu felt that students nowadays were so arrogant that they would say anything just to impress others. Lu had checked Blackhawk's record in Hand of God, which was quite impressive, and Li Yufeng, among others, was in the top 50 in the alliance. However, he had never heard of Han Senator from the data he had collected. Han Sen was not even in the Hand of God Society. Lu looked at Han Sen and ridiculed, "So, you must be much stronger than Li Yufeng at Hand of God?" "Not much, but I could beat him by 20 points, Han Sen said. Lu thought this student was not making any sense at all and gave up talking to him. Fong Mingquan, on the other hand, was intrigued by Han Senator. He said with a smile, "It's great that young people have confidence. When is your game? We will go cheer for you." "I have not got the schedule yet, but I will be at almost all the Warframe matches. You could come at any time." Han Sen swallowed the last bit of his food, stood up and said, "Please take your time. I will go back to rest now." After Han Sen had walked away, Lu said, The youth nowadays are really spoiled. He was just talking through his hat. I think it is a good thing. He has signed up for everything, which is much better than nothing, Feng Mingquan commented with a smile. But Feng Mingquan did not take Han Sen's words seriously. Archery department had low entrance requirements to begin with, so students in that department were generally lacking in fitness. As a freshman from archery department and member of the infamous Heavy Warframe Society, Han Sen was not likely to be the champion of any Warframe item. Han Sen left the cafeteria and walked toward his dormitory. By chance, he saw Ji Yanran, who was also walking back to her dormitory. Hey! Han Sen walked up quickly to greet her, since she was his girlfriend, technically. Ji Yanran saw Han Sen and glanced at him sharply. Then she suddenly had an idea and put on a smile. You always wanted to prove that you did not cheat. So, you must have signed up for Hand of God and Starry Cup? Han Sen sighed. I was going to register for Hand of God, but the members of my society have all signed up for Warframe items, so it seems that there is no chance for me to prove myself. Save it. Ji Yanran despised Han Sen, believing that he simply did not dare to participate in Hand of God games. You are my girlfriend, so do you want to come and see my games? Han Sen smiled and asked her. Enough with the nonsense, Ji Yanran said. Which Warframe items did you sign up for? All of them, with one exception because of a time conflict. Why? You think this is like casting a net? The wider the better? Ji Yanran was slightly curious. For the prizes. There are nearly 10 items under the Warframe category, which was the biggest of all. I could get several first places and easily earn 10 million. Han Sen told the truth. He entered purely to get the rewards. Several first places? I don't think you could even make top 10, let alone top 3, Ji Yanran questioned him. You are underestimating me again, Han Sen said helplessly. That's called analyzing, not underestimating, Ji Yanran said with a smile. That's fine. Since you think I cannot get any prize, then shall we make a bet? Proposed Han Sen. You want to cheat again? Ji Yanran felt a bit uncertain when it came to Han Sen, since she still had not figured out how he had beaten the Thin Man and Li Yufeng in the cup game. Li Yufeng was equally clueless when he thought about it afterwards. Missy, this is a school-wide game. What can I possibly do? Han Sen really did not know why she had this stubborn impression of him being a cheater. For heaven's sake, he had never cheated in front of Ji Yanran. Ji Yanran suggested, Okay, I'm down. You just said you will take several first places in Warframe items. I do not want to embarrass you, so if you can get 5 first places in those items, consider yourself winning the bet. What do I get if I win? Han Sen grinned and asked, If you can be the champion in 5 items, then you will be able to prove yourself, and I will keep my promise to be your girlfriend, Ji Yanran said with a smile, not believing he could get a single championship. Not fair. Han Sen shook his head again and again. How so? Ji Yanran was a bit annoyed. You are already my girlfriend, so the stake means nothing to me. You will have to kiss me if you lose on the mouth, not cheeks. Han Sen then added, It also must be completed within 1 day after the end of the game. The penalty for any delay is 1 kiss per extra day. Ji Yanran was about to lose her temper before she suddenly smiled. All right, but if you are not champion in 5 items, then I will have to punish you as well. Do you disagree? Any punishment you like. I will win anyway, said Han Sen confidently. Do not be so arrogant yet. We have to sign a contract, in case you deny it afterwards. Ji Yanran did not have pen or paper, so she said, Come with me. We will print the contract out and both sign. Ji Yanran led Han Sen to a self-service terminal and printed out 2 copies of the contract. She showed them to Han Sr. Check if you agree with everything stated here. If you do, then sign it please. Han Sen picked up the contract and carefully read it. It was a legally binding document, and he was afraid she might set him up. Fortunately, Ji Yanran did not think she would lose at all, so the contract was fair. If he lost, he just had to teach her how to do his trick in the cup game and make sure she can do it as well. Also, he would need to promise that he would never show up and talk to her without her permission. After reading the contract, Han Sen hesitated because he was not sure if he could teach Sleeveblade to others, as it was from Gambler's family, and he could not leak it without his approval. Ji Yanran saw Han Sen's hesitation and thought he got cold feet. She pouted and said, You are scared now? Where did your arrogance go?